No matter what publishing path you're going on, whether that be traditional, indie, self-publishing, etc., you need to do marketing. And yeah, I know, boo-hoo, 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 we're all crying. Even as someone who has worked in marketing for the past almost 4 years professionally in the corporate environment, marketing your own book is a different beast. And I know you're probably gonna go, Jenna, you haven't even done that much marketing, I've never even heard of your book, etc. Yeah, I'm well aware. I very much so got burnt out of marketing from doing it for my day job. But that's why I'm making this video. Not only was it requested, but I have learned some things that I'm gonna be implementing for myself that I wanted to tell you guys about prior to me doing it. That way I can also look back on this video and go, oh yeah, this is the whole point of, you know, marketing my book, is to find my ideal readership and make sure that they actually know that my book exists. It's not just because pretty graphic design. Love Canva. Love BookBrush. And if you're wondering what those two things are, of course, Canva is going to be where you're going to do all your graphic design, yada yada. If you really want the nitty-gritty details of Canva, I'll leave a link below. And I'm an affiliate for BookBrush. So if you want to check out BookBrush, where you can get mock-ups of your book to add to all of your graphics that you're going to pull over to Canva later, go check out below. So how do you actually start your author social medias, your AuthorTube channel, etc.? Let's jump into it. And this question was asked for by two different people, Sophie Rodam and Beth ZS2 Jr. JR, whichever one it is. And if you want me to dive into any of these specifically, do let me know. This is going to be a big overview video. So for starters, you're going to want to start your author brand. This I could make an entire video just based off of, but to put it simply, your brand is going to be the vibes that you are bringing to the table. You typically want whatever your author brand is to match whatever genre you're writing. And this can be hard for people who are doing multi-genres. This is why they tell you that if you're going to do completely different genres, you should probably have a pen name for at least one of them or both of them so that you can differentiate the brands from themselves. Because if you do adult spicy novels, but you also do children's novels, you do not want the children to figure out that you're the same person writing the spicy adult novels. That is going to be the one time I tell you that you actually have to do something with publishing, and it would be that. Please, if you're writing very young children's books and explicit material, differentiate your brands, differentiate your author names, and try not to connect them because you don't want to be messing with that. But the number one way that you can go and create your author brand is to look at other people in your same genre and start emulating or being inspired by what they are doing. So if you're like, hey, I happen to go and write horror novels. Maybe you find a lot of horror authors on Instagram who you like and you follow, and you love the posts that they do and everything, and you discover that most of them are doing like red and black branding. They're doing things with like slasher icons. They're using a lot of dagger and like knife emojis. Maybe you want to start emulating some of the things that they're doing, maybe some of their posts. And that's going to be the number one thing I'm going to tell you if you want to make an easy peasy brand. Yes, it's not going to stand out as much right away, but if you're trying to just get your toes dipped into the waters and just discover through osmosis of being around other authors, through getting your name out there and figuring out what you actually like doing, because there's no point in doing marketing if you're hating it the entire time. Yes, some readers might find your stuff, but for the most part, people can tell when you really don't like to do marketing. So, easiest way to do this is trying to emulate what other people are doing at first and then making it your own down the line as you discover what you actually like doing with your brand. Because yes, I know brand gets a negative connotation these days, but really it's just the vibe, the aesthetic that you give off on the internet. And if your vibe and your aesthetic matches the genre you write, you're gonna be able to find your readers a lot easier. So yeah, branding yourself. I'm gonna just quick low down here. Very easy, simple way for you to do this. If you guys want a worksheet on this, I can totally do that at some point in time when I'm not moving. Let me know, and again, I'll do a whole video on author brands. But if you're doing things like a slasher, adding a lot of the knife emojis. If you're doing anything in the horror realm, you're probably gonna wanna do something to do with blacks, maybe grays, maybe reds. Why? Because crimson, because blood, the connotation is there. If you're doing things with more romance, especially like sweet romances that don't have spice, you're gonna wanna do a lot of like pink. I'm gonna compare right here like Sarah Sutton's brand to my friend Capri's brand. You can very easily tell just by looking at those profiles what they write very easily. For me personally, I do a lot of purples and a lot of blues, and I have a lot of stars. Why? Because I write space operas and I also write magic, and the star thing can kind of go for either genre. Next is that you're going to just interact as a normal reader first. You're going to see what actually stands out to you as a reader of the genre you are writing. If you're like, hey, I followed like 10 different horror authors that I'm a really big fan of, and I'm noticing the trend recently that they're doing this kind of post, as you're scrolling through Instagram or you're scrolling through Twitter or whatever social media platform you want to do, just start saving them. Save them into a folder of content ideas, post ideas, whatever you want to call it. And then when you actually get the time to sit down and jump on Canva and BookBrush to go and actually make your own graphics or reels or whatever else you're making, you know exactly what kind of content you want to create because you already saved them to a folder. You just go over there, you pop up in one, and you're like, okay, what is actually bringing me joy today? Or what's trending today? You already saved it earlier in the day, you already saved it last week, and you can do the trend, or you can do that kind of post for yourself. And that's gonna be the number one thing that I'm going to say in terms of marketing, is you're gonna wanna post as a reader first. There is a reason why booktubers, who then later become authors, sell better than AuthorTubers. Throwing that out there. I don't think people have talked about this as much, but booktubers presented themselves as readers first, right? They presented themselves as, I'm a reader. That meant they got other readers to follow them. And then they published a book, typically in a genre that they were already a fan of, which means that they were talking about and reviewing other books, finding readers of that genre who were a fan of the genre they ended up writing, and then those people who were following them for reviews and bookish content became readers of theirs through basically osmosis of, hey, you're already in this space, you're already, you know, consuming my romantasy novels I'm reviewing, why not check out mine? Or they'll obviously as well, in terms of booktubers, they will market it as, after reading romantasy for the past 5 years, I was inspired to write my own because I wanted a story that had more of XYZ. That is a great way to brand yourself on the internet and to kind of get more of readers on your side, because that's kind of the problem we've had with AuthorTube, is that the book sales do not translate simply because we're attracting other authors and we might not write the genres that they want to read. We might be attracting more thriller authors, but then we are writing sweet romance. We might be attracting people who write fantasy and sci-fi, but we write contemporary romance. So positioning yourself first as a reader and inserting yourself into reader spaces respectfully and not review bombing other people, just like shouting at other authors you like, talking about tropes that you like, different things like that, is going to help you in the long run. It's going to position yourself as, I'm a reader, and if I am viewing social media through the lens of a reader, what kind of posts are actually jumping out at me? What kind of books am I actually buying on TikTok Shop? Or I'm following this author because of their posts, because I'm a big fan of their story. What are they then doing to find new readers? What are they doing to drag you into their profiles? Emulate that for yourself. Obviously, once you're done actually consuming everything as a reader, positioning yourself, making your social media profiles, and all of those different things, you're going to want to, of course, transition into, hey, I am also an author. Very sly. If you already have profiles up and people already know you as an author, then no problemo. You're just gonna also start talking about reading. You're also gonna start talking about other books, things that are normal in your genre, maybe some recently released TV shows or movies in your genre that you're a big fan of. This will also help you by consuming things in your genre that will later inspire you, but then also you might find some things that you can use for comps later to help advertise your book. Comps being comparative titles. You're obviously going to also want a headshot. I literally just had mine in front of these bookshelves. You don't have to do anything fancy, but I would say that along with the whole branding thing, your headshot should kind of give people a gist of who you are as a person. Some people want to be faceless. That is completely understandable in today's day and age. Only thing with that is I recommend not doing like a pit crew, because pit crews have just been notoriously known for bad actors at this point when they use it for their profile picture. I would recommend just getting a small artist to make you something instead. Now, for AuthorTube specific advice, I do have a video that's kind of old. I don't know exactly everything that I go on to in that video, but I'll leave it linked there if you want to check it out, about an old AuthorTube one. But I know specifically these people were asking about AuthorTube specifically, so I want to give my number one piece of advice. And if you guys want a whole updated AuthorTube video, how to make one, how to set it up, etc., do let me know. I can go into a more advanced episode about that. But the number one piece of advice is, do you want to educate or do you want to entertain? That is going to be the number one thing that you want to figure out. If you want to do both, like how I do, you kind of got to know what you're getting into. So for example, if you want to educate, you're going to be making educational how-to advice videos. The problem with doing this, especially if you're talking about the writing craft itself, is the fact that people are going to be criticizing your work more than they would do with anyone else. It has unfortunately kind of become a thing that a lot of readers do honestly say, is that booktube and AuthorTube books just aren't as good, especially if the person is giving advice. Whether or not you believe in that or not, that is going to be the sentiment that some people do have. And I know this is why a lot of people have been afraid to make advice videos. They also don't want to come across as too condescending or like it's their way or the highway. Which is why I think if you're doing education content, you just have to come across with, hey, this is what worked for me. Try it for yourself. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, throw it away. Take what resonates and leave the rest. And of course that goes with all of my videos as well. Whenever I'm trying to educate or teach something, when I'm doing these sit down videos, that is going to always be my caveat to any advice I'm giving you. What worked for me will not always work for you. But before you do that kind of content, you do have to know that there are going to be certain groups of people who are going to be viewing your work in a more critical lens. If you're giving advice on something like world building, but then you don't actually have any world building inside of your contemporary romance, or you getting negative reviews about your world building, people will start to call you a hypocrite. But again, what is good world building to one person might be bad world building to somebody else. So everything is subjective. And that is something that you're just going to have to know, is that you're probably going to face more criticism just on the basis of the content that you make. That's why I recommend as well, if you're going to do educational content, that you're only doing things with personal experience that you have, like things that people who read your book are complimenting you on, or questions you're specifically getting asked on the basis of, for example, this video, the content that I make. People are asking me how to make author content because even though I haven't posted as much on IG and everything, they know that, hey, for my day job, this is literally what I did for a career. And then two, they like my videos. And this is part of my marketing. Although again, I am going against my own advice because I am targeting with this channel other authors and not readers, but I also just personally know when I went into this that my viewers on YouTube are not going to always translate to book sales, and that is okay. But I went into that knowing that ahead of time because of my experience in marketing, versus other people I think started channels because they thought that it was going to lead to sales, and then when it didn't, they dropped off. This is basically its own entirely separate career and entity, is doing AuthorTube versus being an author. And I've heard from many people who are struggling to sort of divide their time up between AuthorTube stuff and actual author career stuff. So it is kind of like having an entirely separate business, and that is also something that you need to know going into it before you start an AuthorTube channel, although I do recommend everyone try it at least once. That is something to know, and see if you actually love it, but don't do it because you think it's going to make book sales, because it's probably not. Now, starting a booktube to get book sales seems to be a better pipeline, but if it's not what makes you happy or brings you joy, and you also don't want to risk having to review a book and maybe say positive things about it, even though you didn't have a positive view of it, but then you know the person's in your genre, it becomes messy when you're a reviewer and also an author. I'll put that out there as well. Versus if you're entertaining, or if you're inspiring or motivating or other things like that, those are just entertainment-based content that people can watch, enjoy, and no, again, they're going to like you as a person if they're watching your content, you hope, right? You hope. And they're watching you for you, not necessarily because of what you are creating. Again, you might have people who like you as a person who want to go and watch your videos because of the content that you make, does not necessarily translate into them wanting to read the book that you're publishing. There are plenty of people who followed me when I was writing a space opera and I was giving out sci-fi writing advice, which is a little tidbit too. If you're going to make advice and you do want people to translate over, you might want to cater your advice to genre specific so that you can get people who are already interested in that genre into your channel, and they might translate to book sales. But again, that is a long pipeline. Don't start an AuthorTube channel just because you think it'll lead to book sales, because 9 times out of 10 it doesn't. And the plus side of doing entertainment-based content is that for the most part, people aren't going to be as critical of your work as they would be of someone who's doing education. People are always more critical of people who are giving advice because they want to know that they're living what they're advising people to do. Versus entertaining is more so, hey, watch me publish this book. Hey, let me get you motivated to write your book. It kind of diverts the attention away from the fact that they have their own book, and doesn't put them in a position necessarily of influence where if they give bad advice that potentially hurts other people, you're kind of negating that ability to do so. It kind of takes the edge off of getting all of that extra criticism for your book. And if you're doing educational content, by the way, this reminds me, you're gonna wanna have something of yours to read somewhere on the internet. I know that's scary, I know that's not always possible if you're doing traditional publishing, but that is always my caveat, is that you should have something free for people to read on the internet, some sort of taste of your writing, because some people do not want the whole they can teach but they can't do kind of scenario. And not saying that that will be you, not saying that about anybody else, but again, what people are reading is completely subjective. So if someone ends up reading what you have online and they don't like your writing style, they're not going to want to implement you through your educational content. Because there are plenty of people who want a teacher or want to be educated by someone who does something that they actually enjoy. There's the old, saying of they can teach but they can't do. For the most part in this day and age, a lot of people don't like listening to advice from people who have not had the lived experience of said thing that they're advising people about. Yes, you might have published a book, but did you publish a book that they liked with success that they wanted to emulate? If you're giving world building advice, do they like your world building? If you're giving romance writing advice, do they like the romance that you wrote? You should have something online for people to be able to read. It doesn't have to be your entire novel, but at the very least, like a first chapter, so that people can read and see whether or not they actually like your writing before you start giving advice to people. Next is that when you're on the internet, the whole point of it, honestly, in my point of view, is to make friends, connect with people, because Personally, I find it a lot more fun when I am on social media and I know other people and I have mutuals that I can cheer on, and then they will go and cheer me on because we have a rapport going, because we have an understanding with each other, because we like each other, because we're writing similar things, and it makes social media so much more fun. No one wants to create in a vacuum just posting, hey, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. That doesn't get you as far as some people think that it will. And that's my last tip for all of this, is have fun, find the joy. The rules are fake. You do not have to adhere to what anyone else's tips for social media are, or how to start your author brand or anything else if it doesn't bring you joy. There are some people who actually make big fit names for themselves and they don't actually end up having a social media presence. I don't think I've seen a single social media post ever by Suzanne Collins. And yes, traditional publishing is different from self-publishing, but still, if you want to have a faceless pick crew account, you can do so. If you want to have an AuthorTube account that's just educational and you never share a chapter of your writing online, then I'm sure there's people who are not even going to think about whether or not they've never read your writing and are taking your writing advice. The rules are fake. Do what brings you joy. This is just some things to think about and some things that worked for me. And if again, you want me to make any further videos about like author branding or starting an AuthorTube channel, do leave them down below and I'll make sure to make that next. But if you're like, hey, I know I need an author brand and I know I need a website and different things like that and I don't know how to do any of that, you can actually hit me up. I offer services to make people's brands and their websites for them. And I'm only really working right now with creatives after, again, working for 4 years in corporate America. I'd rather work with things that I'm really passionate about, like other creative people. So if you're interested in my services, do check them out down below. And to see that proof is in the pudding, my website is also now linked down below so that you can check out my website. And if you like what I created for myself, then you might like what I have to offer you too. So if you like this video, do remember to subscribe because I have weekly videos coming at you guys as often as I feasibly can in the middle of this move. Catch you guys in the next one, so bye!